The Atlanta Braves won their weekend series against the Phillies 2-1 and then shook up the rotation. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on into Braves Today, a production of the Belief Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. I'm Lindsey Crosby, founder of BravesToday.com, a daily newsletter about the Atlanta Braves. I want to talk about Atlanta beating the Phillies 2-1 this weekend, meaning the Braves are still the only team in baseball to have not lost a series this year, and then to shake up their rotation. And I think we're going to start with that, because we saw last week, the middle of last week, two unexpected bullpen games by the Braves. Reynaldo López makes a midweek start and doesn't record an out in the second inning. Atlanta has to use Jose Suarez for 3 innings of that game just to get through it. And then the next day, Didier Fuentes has a long bottom of the first inning and ends up only going 3, and Martín Pérez has to enter in that game and pitch an extended outing as well, meaning the Braves had to call up JR Ritchie for Thursday's start. So there was some positive that came out of that. But because of that, it feels like the rotation's been in flux ever since. And the big thing for me was we didn't see JR Ritchie immediately option down back to Gwinnett after the game, like a lot of people speculated. I think I maybe mentioned in a Instagram short or Instagram reel, wondered if that was going to happen, because they wanted him to be an option this week. Well, Atlanta last night announced the rotation for this week versus the Tigers. Martín Pérez, the veteran, will get another start. He's 1-1 with a 2.70 ERA here. Tuesday night, 7:15 at Truist Park and on Braves Vision. It is Martín Pérez versus former number 1 overall pick Casey Mize on Tuesday. Wednesday will be JR Ritchie getting his second start of his career in the majors opposite Tarik Skubal, 2-time reigning Cy Young winner in the American League, one of the best, if not the best lefty in the game right now. So hey, no pressure, kid. You're just up against a 2-time Cy Young winner on the other side. And then Thursday will be sinker baller and ground ball specialist Bryce Elder against sinker baller and ground ball specialist Framber Valdez, one of the most notable offseason pitching signings by any team, on Thursday afternoon series finale. That game is at 12:15 Eastern, so a lot earlier than we normally get. I feel like a lot of Braves day games end up being something like 1:30, something like that. This is 12:15 Eastern. And this is not originally how the rotation lined up. And I think we got a hint that something was going to be different on Sunday afternoon when in the 7th inning, they showed a shot of Atlanta's bullpen on the broadcast, like they do a lot, and there was double barrel action going on. On one of the bullpen mounds was Aaron Bummer, lefty ground ball specialist. Atlanta's used him a lot when they face a couple lefties. And speaking of, last night was the 3rd time that he's been asked to go handle Kyle Schwarber of the Phillies. And it's a little bit of overexposure of Bummer to Schwarber, and Schwarber got him for a 2-run home run. That overexposure of relievers thing is typically something that you see in the postseason, not so much in the regular season. But because of baseball's weird schedule, where you face the Phillies 6 times in 10 days, it was not the first time. It was like the 3rd or 4th time he had been asked to go get Kyle Schwarber out in the span of like a week. And so that's why, you can only keep a power hitter like Kyle Schwarber down so long, especially when you're a guy like Aaron Bummer, whose stuff is a little bit diminished from where he was a few years ago. So, was frustrating, but I get it. We never saw Lopez actually enter the game, but we did get some clarity on this after the game. Walt Weiss, talking to the media, said that they're going to put him in the bullpen temporarily to, quote, iron some things out. And the whole thing here is, quote, he's working on some things delivery-wise, that type of thing, and he's getting there. And when he's right, he's one of our best starters. He was our number 2 coming out of camp, even with some of the issues he had at the end of spring training. We see him as a starter long term, but right now, he's going to help us out of the pen in the short term. So Reynaldo López will spend a little bit of time in the bullpen. And what's important to know is, I guess, 1, in the near term, and then 2, in the long term, rotate mechanics have been a thing for Reynaldo López for a while. A lot of us remember the final spring training start for Reynaldo López when he was throwing 89, 90 miles an hour on his fastball. And a lot of concern there. And Reynaldo López threw a bullpen a day or 2 later. They fixed that mechanical issue. And when he came out for his first start of the year this year, his fastball was closer to his usual norm, right? In that 2024 season where he started for us so much, he averaged 95.5 on his four-seam fastball, and he's only averaging 94 this season on the fastball. But he came out averaging 90, just under 95 in that first start, and he was able to ramp it up kind of like usual. But the velocity overall is down for him this year. So in the short term, we've seen mechanical issues with Reynaldo López. And on the long term, that's been a thing for him in his career. When he was a prospect, a lot of the conversation behind him was that he had a long, arm-heavy delivery. And he needed to shorten up what he was doing so that he could get the control required to eventually stick as a starter. And he wasn't able to simplify that delivery until he became a reliever. His first year as a starter wasn't bad. 2018, he made 32 starts, 3.91 ERA. A little bit of an overperformance. His field independent pitching was 4.63. But then in 2019, he made 33 starts at 184 innings and had a 5.38 ERA. He led all qualified starters in runs allowed with 110. He struck out 170. Sure, he walked 65. None of that stuff was egregious. He did give up 35 home runs and a combined total of 60 across those 2 seasons. And after an 8-game starting stint in 2020, the White Sox pulled the plug on him and moved him to the bullpen. And when he went to the bullpen, he became a very good reliever because he finally figured out the mechanical stuff. He finally figured out simplifying the delivery. And I went back and found an interview with him from 2022. And he was talking about like some of the differences was he had to better incorporate his legs versus just doing, I said it was an arm-heavy delivery. He had to better use the entire kinetic chain versus overthrowing with his arm to get the velocity that he was looking for. Because he had all of that arm effort, his control was a little scattershot. When he'd miss, it'd be a bad miss. He'd leave pitches in the middle of the zone. They'd get crushed, that kind of stuff. And back in 2022, when he was talking about it being a reliever, quote, everything feels in place. Everything is synced up. My delivery is like all in one movement. My arm action is good. I feel loose. Last year was a difficult one, and to get to this point wasn't an easy process. It was a lot of work and a lot of changes I had to make. Now, because of that, I feel more comfortable. My pitches are better, my command's better, and that's been the key. And we all have kind of focused on the fastball, right? Like that's the thing that we've all looked at to say, hey, what's going on with Reynaldo López? I feel like you can better get an idea by looking at a guy's slider. And it appears that Reynaldo López's slider has not been the same caliber of pitch that it was in previous seasons. So for instance, 2024, when he made, he had a 1.99 ERA for the Braves. He made 25 starts and 1 relief appearance later in the year with the shoulder issue. His slider was getting 3.5 inches more drop than the standard MLB slider. and it was getting about half an inch of more glove side movement than the average righty slider. The comparable righty sliders, when you look at slots and all of that, and his arm slot's the same. The exact same really angle. His extension to the plate is the exact same. So a lot of the underlying stuff there is the same. The comparisons are the same. This year, it's only about an inch and a half more drop than usual. So he lost some drop. Now, he added a little bit of glove side movement, but still not much. It's still less than an inch more movement. So he traded off a few inches of drop for less than an inch of additional glove side movement. And I'm not saying that's intentional. I'm not saying he deliberately said, hey, if I can do this and make it drop a little less, I can get this with it. He's also throwing it a couple miles an hour softer. He doesn't have the velocity base there. The movement profile is different. And so when he doesn't have the velocity to reach back and get on the fastball, and the slider movement is a little bit different, you get into a situation where his slider goes from a 167 average and a 256 slug in 2024 to, in a very small sample size, let's be clear here, a 368 average and a 579 slug. The most telling part for me is the whiff rate on the pitch has dropped more than 10%. So, yeah, he needs the fastball velocity, but he needs that slider to be there. The fastball-slider combo is what he is built around. He has good fastball velocity with a reliever kind of mindset on how he uses it and the velocity he puts behind it. The slider's his primary secondary, and then he has that curveball and he has a changeup. It's the similar package to Spencer Strider without the eliteness of the fastball. And it's not working for Reynaldo Lopez this year, so he's going to go to the pen. He's below average strikeout rate, below average walk rate, 21.1% strikeout rate, 11.6% walk rate. He's doing a decent job of limiting hard contact, 70th percentile hard hit rate at 34.9%, but he's not getting chase, he's not getting whiffs. You've got to figure out how to fix this. So he'll work like that. And meanwhile, JR Ritchie will get a start, and then you'll have another decision to make likely this weekend because Spencer Strider appears like he might be done with rehab. Let's talk about all of that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Grand Slam Getaways. If you've dreamt of going on the ultimate baseball road trip, this one's for you. Grand Slam Getaways offers bucket list baseball road trips designed for fans who love the game and want to travel in style. All these trips depart from Atlanta via bus, include field level tickets, 3-star hotels, daily breakfast, a full slate of ballparks, and other activities. Each of these trips has at least 2 Braves road games, plus appearances by former MLB players, giveaways, fun side trips to places like the Louisville Slugger Museum, the Bull Durham filming locations, and more. Whether you're retired, a baseball nut, or just looking for a parent-child summer adventure, this is a stress-free way to hit the road with fellow fans. There's 2 remaining trips to choose from this year. May to Florida is already booked and baked and in the bag. But June to the Midwest, July to the Northeast. Both of these are timed to match up with multiple Braves road games and some other games along the route in notable ballparks. So, reserve your spot now with a small deposit. Head to grandslam-getaways.com to make this summer a Grand Slam. Check it out now, grandslam-getaways.com to let the baseball adventure begin. Spencer Strider's rehab start in Gwinnett on Sunday went kind of as well as you could have hoped for. He threw 5 innings. He faced a batter in the 6th inning before hitting that kind of 80-pitch limit and being pulled from the game. He threw 82 pitches. 50 of those were strikes. He did walk that leadoff runner in the 6th before he left, and then that runner did come around to score. I think Hunter Stratton came in after him, and then Stratton ended up allowing that runner to score. So he was tagged with 2 earned runs on 4 hits with 2 walks and 7 strikeouts in his 5+ innings. He actually took the loss. First time he's taken a loss in Gwinnett in his career, because I think he's made like 7 appearances there. That was in, shout out Dave Lazat, the broadcaster for the Gwinnett Stripers. He has great game notes, and he had that in the game notes. I just can't remember exactly what he said. But Strider had 17 whiffs in this one. 34% CSW. He touched 97 multiple times. He averaged 95 on the four-seam fastball, which was, is closer to where he was last year. He never had an inning where he averaged 96, but he was able to reach back and get 97 multiple times. He had 17 inches of induced vertical break on the four-seam fastball. Reminder, he had 16 last year, and we were talking about the shape isn't necessarily good enough. His previous rehab start before this, he was averaging 18. He had a couple fastballs in this one that came in at like 14 inches IVB, and so because of that, the average kind of came down a little bit. But for the most part, 17 whiffs, 5 on the fastball, 7 on the slider. He also got 3 on the curveball and 2 on the changeup. A 34% CSW, so called strikes plus whiffs. And he was able to... Here's the thing. When you watch what he did, a lot of the effectiveness that he had was the four-seamer and the slider in the zone and the curveball for chase. He had chase rates under 30% on the four-seamer and the slider, but the curveball's chase rate was like 43%, I believe. And the thing that stood out to me is he had the ability to throw all 4 pitches for strikes. The strike percentage on the four-seamer was 63%. The strike percentage on the slider was 61%. The strike percentage on the curveball was 60%. He threw 10 of those. He had the ability to throw everything for strikes. And that's, I feel like the velocity in the fastball shape's the number 1 thing that we looked at last year, but this is number 2. Now, I still think the velocity needs a little bit to get there. It could be similar to what we saw with Zach Wheeler last week, where the velocity was down a little bit in the rehab starts, and then when he got that third deck around him in the big league ballpark, Wheeler was looking pretty close to normal when you saw him on Saturday. Gave Philly a pretty close to Zach Wheeler-esque start, to the point where after we won the series, Braves Imperialism over in the Braves Today Discord, the Imperialism game where we take a player when we win a series, they decided rather than wanting Yohan Duran, who's on the IL right now, but they wanted a fantastic reliever, they decided we want Zach Wheeler instead. We want to add Zach Wheeler to Atlanta's rotation. If you want more info on the Imperialism game and how they handle Atlanta's roster after every series win or technically loss, it's going to happen eventually, you can check that out. It's in the Braves Today Discord. Links in the episode description. That's completely free. If you want to go, there's a channel for it. You want to go kind of play around with them. It's a fun game that they're doing there. While you're looking at Braves Today associated links, bravestoday.shop has merchandise there, whether it's, metal coffee mugs or ceramic coffee mugs, water bottles, hats, koozies, laptop stickers. I want you to throw a Cutter t-shirt, all that kind of fun stuff. bravestoday.shop. So when you're trying to look at, okay, Strider could come back. He could return this week. If you assume they're not going to push him past 80 pitches in a rehab start when they could just do it in the majors. A lot of major league starters who are rehabbing typically go 80 to 85 pitches, and then they come up, and that's the next ones when you push them to 90, and then you push them to 100, and they're there within 2 or 3 starts. You get the Tigers for 3 this week, like I said, where it's Martín Pérez, and it's JR Ritchie, and it's Bryce Elder, which, by the way, I love moving Bryce Elder up to Thursday because that's Bryce Elder on regular rest. I don't want Bryce Elder getting extra rest. I don't think he needs extra rest. He's a sinker baller. You want those guys a little bit fatigued, or at least, at the very least, not with excess rest. So I love the idea of Elder stays on schedule. Ritchie pitches as close to schedule as you can get him. I love how they did that. And then you could see Strider come back on the road trip. He would, if you pitched him on regular rest, which I think they'd probably give him an extra day, but regular rest would be Friday night in Colorado versus the Rockies. You could do him on Friday. You could do him on Saturday. But either way, it feels like he would pitch against the Rockies. If he pitches Friday, and like here's the thing is, you could get Reynaldo López back by then. Remember, he's trying to get his mechanics right after arthroscopic surgery on his shoulder. And that's the thing here is you have a bucket of potential starters that the Braves could all use. When you look at Atlanta starting options right now, Chris Sale, Martín Pérez, JR Ritchie, Bryce Elder, Grant Holmes, Reynaldo López, technically Carlos Carrasco, but they're not going to use him like that. And then you're going to add Strider. Like, you could legitimately have 7 rotation options plus spots if you need them from Carlos Carrasco and Jose Suarez. You're going to lose somebody when Strider comes back. I feel like it could be Jose Suarez, but since he's a lefty, I don't know. They may DFA Carlos Carrasco and re-sign him in Gwinnett. But either way, that's kind of the boat that you're in here, right? Like, you have a lot of starting options. And do I love the idea of Strider coming back in Colorado? That's a tough place to make your season debut, especially for a guy like Strider who can be prone to fly balls. But here's the thing. Your road trip, Friday, Saturday, Sunday in Colorado, and then you go from there to Seattle for 3 against the Mariners. You have an off day on Thursday, and then you go to LA for 3 versus the Dodgers. So, if the Braves start Strider in the Colorado series, you can get them back for the Dodgers series. Bryce Elder pitching in the Tigers series on Thursday means that he lines up for a start on Tuesday in Seattle and then would line up for the series finale on Sunday against the Dodgers. I don't know how much of this is them trying to set a rotation for when they take on LA, but you could see how they would want to do that and why they would want to do that, right? If you throw Strider on, let's say you Friday the 1st, I feel like give him extra rest, right? Throw Sale on Friday, throw Strider on Saturday. Then the 5th day for Strider would be the off day. You start him on extra rest against LA. If you throw Sale on Friday, the 5th day for him is the series finale against the Mariners. If you pull Lopez out or you use somebody else there, you can bump Sale and Strider both to LA. We're going to see how they handle this. It's all of this sounds like, okay, yeah, this is all straightforward, but you have to remember a lot of this depends on how guys do in these starts, right? We saw Lopez and Fuentes both have short starts, and because of that, they had to scramble and do a bunch of different stuff. So you can have an idea of what you want to do now, and I like the idea of trying to stack Sale, Strider, and Elder against the Dodgers, which, by the way, who thought a year ago or 2 years ago or whatever that we'd be saying we wanted Elder to be one of the 3 guys that we throw against the Dodgers? But it all depends on what happens against the Tigers this week. And then it kind of depends on what happens against the Rockies this weekend and the Mariners next week. But you can see how, you got to think these things out now. You've got more starting options than you have starting spots. And you can try to run a 6-man for a little while and hope that nobody has a super short start. Because the first time somebody has a super short start, and this is what AA's told us. We asked AA specifically about this in the offseason. And he said they'd love to run a 6-man all season, kind of like the Dodgers get to, because Ohtani doesn't count as a pitcher. He doesn't count towards one of your 13 pitcher spots. But the first time you have a guy get blown up and leave the game early, and we had it twice last week, it throws the whole thing out the window because the bullpen is taxed. So let's see what the Braves do, but you can see how this could work out, right? In just a minute, let's get to that series win against Philly. I know it's the day after the series win, but just some of the good that we saw, some of the bad that we saw, we'll do all of that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today, Lindsey Crosby. Braves took 2 out of 3 from Philly. Atlanta is, at this point, still the only team to have not lost a series on the year. If you were counting, Phillies now lost 6 consecutive series, which feels like it's not good. Part of me wonders if by the time this show drops at noon Eastern on Monday on YouTube, I get the audio out as soon as it's done, but the video is noon Eastern on YouTube. If either Phillies manager Rob Thompson or Mets manager Carlos Mendoza no longer has a job. The Mets lost their doubleheader to the Rockies yesterday, scoring a grand total combined in both games of 1 run. Not great. But Atlanta wins this one, wins the series. And kind of true to form in these series, none of these were blowouts. Atlanta wins 5-3 on Friday night on Star Wars night. They lose 8-5 on Saturday, and it was tied at 4 going into extras. We'll talk about the Jose Suarez thing in a second. And then they win 6-2 on Sunday on Michael Harris's mini bobblehead day. I guess he didn't get the bobblehead day bump because it wasn't a full-size bobblehead day, but just a mini bobblehead day. And here's the wild thing. When you look at the aggregate stats for Atlanta's offense and the aggregate stats for Atlanta's rotation, or pitching staff in general, over the weekend, they weren't amazing. They were fine. It was good effort, but it wasn't like you just dominated on one side of the ball. Atlanta scores 16 runs in the series, which is an average of 5.3 a game, which is nothing to sneeze at. That's a really good average per game. They had 29 hits, 9 of those are for extra bases. They struck out 18 times, they walked 10. So it's a 279 average with a 345 on base and a 433 slug. That's a 778 OPS for the weekend. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's, good or bad or whatever, but that's fine. Okay, sure. 700, high 700s OPS. You'd love your stars to be better. You'd love a number like that from your role players. On the whole, Atlanta's offense was fine. They averaged 1 home run a game. Now, the distribution of those matters, right? They hit against Reynaldo on Sunday. They had 2 in the first 2 innings. But they had 3 total home runs in the series. And they won 2-1. When you look at the pitching side of this, they covered 28 innings because 3 9-inning games plus extras. They gave up 3 home runs. They walked only 9, and they struck out 25. And to me, that's kind of the big thing, is the Braves' offense was drawing some walks. They averaged 3 and change walks a game, and they averaged 6 strikeouts a game. But on the pitching side, Atlanta struck out 8 to 9 batters a game and issued on average about 3 walks a game. That's the difference, is the offense is working counts, getting deeper into counts, getting free passes, and not striking out a ton. The pitching staff is not allowing a ton of free passes and is getting plenty of punchies. Kind of the difference there. And so Atlanta's total ERA for the weekend is a 3.21, which, again, you're perfectly happy if you get that from your number 3, number 4. You're a little bummed if you get that from your ace of your rotation. Atlanta was fine offensively, and they were fine pitching-wise. And it didn't necessarily... They didn't sweep, but they didn't lose the series. They won 2-1. It's kind of, honestly, on paper, it's kind of a boring series. Right? It's kind of, there's not a lot of domination from any specific player other than maybe Chris Sale's start on Sunday, where Chris Sale allows 1 hit and no runs in 6 innings with 9 strikeouts. But for the most part, this is just really good performance, a above average performance overall by the team on the weekend. And I think that's kind of the big deal here. And some of the noteworthy stuff that happened over the weekend. And reminder, we do 2 newsletters for every game. We do the scouting report before the game over at bravestoday.com with info on the opposing starter, what they throw, all of that stuff. And then we do today's 3 things after the game. And the 3 things that we cover is the turning point of the game, the player of the game, and what you'll be talking about after the game. So if you ever want to go back like after the game or the next morning and, hey, what I missed, especially with a late night series coming up, a whole week of late night series out in the West Coast, bravestoday.com. Some of the big stories on Friday, the Michael Harris thing, right? Michael Harris is scratched from the initial lineup because of a recurrence of the quad tightness that made him leave Thursday's game. But he comes in to pinch hit, and it's the bottom of the sixth. Very early for a pinch hitter, but they went ahead and went with it. He hit for Eli White, 2 outs, runner in scoring position. So there's a runner on second and a runner on first. And he ends up, like, the process of the at-bat. He pulls a Kirk Gibson here. He hits a 2-run scoring double. And it makes Rob Thompson finally go out eventually to pull Andrew Painter. They kept Painter in for too long. And it's a fun fact here. And if Thompson gets fired, they're going to mention that at-bat, by the way. Because the Phillies had multiple lefties available in the pen, but they didn't have anybody getting ready. So when Harris was announced as the pinch hitter, they didn't have a lefty to go to. They had to leave Painter in. When they had said they wanted to they wanted to send out lefty for Michael Harris if he got into the game, they didn't have anybody ready. But anyway, the process here was really good. It's a curveball down and away. He lays off of it. And we know those breaking pitches away have been kind of an issue for Michael Harris, down and away. He lays off the curveball down and away. And then he lays off a fastball up and away, off the plate, slightly above the zone. Like, he lays off both of those. And so Andrew Painter has to come into the zone, or at least come towards the zone with a pitch. He throws a fastball outer third and down. It's just touching. Like, that may have been called a ball, and if the ABS challenged it, it would have been a strike. And he gets it out to the left, off the left center wall. And I've noticed this adjustment. Opposing pitchers are throwing Michael Harris less first pitch strikes. He was in like the mid 60s the last couple of years on first pitch strikes. That's dropped to like 55% this year. And so one of the good adjustments that Michael Harris has made is understanding that tendency and not chasing early in the at-bat so that he gets into a hitter's count and they have to come into the zone. And like, this is an example of that working for him. That was the whole thing. And then the bullpen decisions in that game. Obviously, the Michael Harris pinch hit thing was great. Oh, by the way, Jorge Mateo comes in to run for him immediately. They don't even let him run the bases. He steals third and then scores on a wild pitch. But the other part of this, the aggressiveness from Walt Weiss, is Raisel Iglesias is on the IL. Dylan Lee was down because he pitched on both Wednesday and Thursday. So he goes to Aaron Bummer in the 7th inning. Bummer gets Schwarber to ground out, gets Harper to ground out, and then Joel Payamps pitches the 8th towards the middle to the bottom of the order. It was a risk. 8 balls were put in play. 3 of them were hard hit, and they combined for 1 whiff, but it worked. And Robert Suarez comes out, pitches a clean 9th, and you're good. Dylan Lee gets a night off. Tyler Kinley got the night off. And then in game 2, this is the one that Atlanta lost. The defense was just awful, right? You gave up 3 triples, 1 to each outfielder, and 2 of the 3 were egregious misplays. Mike Yastrzemski in the top of the first with 2 outs lays out for a flare into left field towards the line, doesn't get it, and it rolls all the way to the wall. Like, he doesn't even touch it. It's not like it was off his glove. He doesn't even touch the thing. Rolls all the way to the wall. It's an RBI triple. Ronald Acuna Jr. goes up. There's one into the right field corner. He jumps up like right next to the line painted on the wall to catch it. It hits the bricks above his glove and rolls halfway back to, like, bounces halfway back to the infield. Matt Olson's out there. In the box score, it says a fly ball to right field to Matt Olson. It's kind of funny how it's listed because he's the guy who got it. But that was another run-scoring triple. And then Eli White, playing center for Michael Harris, gets a terrible jump on a fly ball and then slips. It was raining on Saturday. Then slips as he tries to pivot to get on the right route, and it rolls all the way to the wall. And that runner comes around to score. 3 of their 4 runs in regulation. And then Jose Suarez comes out for the 10th instead of Robert Suarez. He can't grip the ball that well. He doesn't have his slider, and he gives up a bunch of runs here. And let's talk about that a little bit. Robert Suarez had thrown 17 pitches on Friday, so they go to Jose Suarez for the 10th instead. And Jose Suarez has not been terrible left on left. That's what they're trying to do here. They're trying to get left on left for Schwarber and Harper. Well, he walks Trey Turner, then he walks Kyle Schwarber, then he gives up a 2 RBI single to left to Harper. Then he throws a wild pitch, and I think that was another kind of rain-impacted thing. Strikes out Adolis Garcia, and then Brandon Marsh, who is, Philly never lets him bat against lefties. He works a 5-pitch at-bat. He gets a single that scores 2 more. And so you're in this boat of Aaron Bummer's stuff isn't as good anymore, right? It's deteriorated. Jose Suarez, and we need to see more, but he struggled against lefties in that situation. Granted, it's some of the better lefties in the league, but he struggled against lefties there. Was that him? Was that rain? Whatever. Outside of Dylan Lee, I feel like you've got to find a second leverage lefty between now and the trade deadline. Hopefully they can make it to the trade deadline, right? Because guys typically don't come available now. But I feel like you've got to figure out another leverage lefty. Dylan Dodd's a lefty, but he's better against righties than lefties. Do they think Hayden Harris can be that guy? What do you do? But you've got to figure out somebody other than Dylan Lee who can be a lefty who can pitch high leverage situations and handle left-handed batters. Because the Braves don't really have that right now. Aaron Bummer's doing that role. But again, I mentioned it earlier. Hard hit balls, lack of whiffs. He's getting through it. But also, on Sunday, he didn't get through it. Kyle Schwarber had a 2-run home run. And we're getting to that in a minute. So, find a leverage lefty here. I don't know where you're going to do it, but they got to figure out something. I guess we can go ahead and mention that. Yeah, Game 3, Chris Sale's absolutely cruising here. And it's funny because the only hit that he gave up ended up a bases-loaded situation in the 3rd inning. This was the turning point of the game, I think. Atlanta's already up 6-0. And he hits Rafael Marchand with a slider. And then Turner gets a single to left. And then Schwarber draws a walk to load the bases with 2 outs. But that brought up Bryce Harper. And Chris Sale's like, yeah, he's 2 for 13 in his career off of me. And Sale just carves him up. Just absolutely rips him to pieces. But in the 8th, you had a situation where Aaron Bummer comes in again for the top of the order again, and Kyle Schwarber gets him for a 2-run homer. And a lot of people were mad about this and said, hey, Aaron Bummer sucks. His stuff isn't the same, but I kind of excuse this for 2 reasons. And the first one was the innings should never have gotten to Kyle Schwarber. Austin Riley commits a fielding error that would have been the 2nd out, which meant when Trey Turner grounded out, that would have been the 3rd out of the inning, and then it would have been over. He would not have had to face Kyle Schwarber. But then also, it's like the 3rd or 4th time he faced Kyle Schwarber in the last week. Eventually, Schwarber's going to do it. I mentioned that earlier. I'm not going to go back into that. But he can only do it. He can only get the same guy out so many times before it's not going to work anymore. But all in all, a good series for Atlanta. The offense looked great on Sunday in the first couple innings. This is another game where they scored 6 in the first 2 innings and then just couldn't score anymore. Don't really know what happened. Stopped scoring runs after that. But they go 2-1. And off today before they take on the Tigers this week. We'll talk more about the Tigers specifically and all of these pitchers tomorrow when we preview the series. And then remember, you will get the scouting report both in written and podcast form before every game this week, schedule permitting. We do the postcast over on Locked On Sports Atlanta after each game live. It's Jake and I, me and Jake doing that. And then on the newsletter, today's 3 things after every game this week. That'll do it for Braves Today on Monday the 27th. We're going to try to get a little bit of extra content out this week, given the schedule and everything. We'll see how that works. But in the meantime, please like the video. Please subscribe, both here and at bravestoday.com. And we'll see you next time on Braves Today.